Hey everybody, welcome. My name is Zac. I am the creative director of World of Game Design and Bite Size Gaming, and I am joined today by our team lead on our Scrap Rats project, Andrew Hindenburg. Andrew, say hey.
Hello, everybody.
So this is going to be a largely informal little chat. I know some of you don't like to read, and I know I don't read a lot of the Kickstarter pages that I check out. Or I don't read all of it, certainly. And then there's also people who read the whole page and still want to know more. So this video, this stream is really to help both of those types of people get a little bit more info about what this project is. It's going to be just an informal chat. We're going to walk through what's in this book, what we like about it, what we're excited about, hopefully the whole book, and hopefully not take too much of your time. But yeah, so Andrew, I kind of introduced myself. I'll say that also that I wrote the original Scrap Rats book that we put out for the 5e hack system that we messed around with. I did that with my friends Troy and Joe last year. And we have now sold through 2 print runs of that book, and we are on to Mothership, which is a system that we really love. This is, Kickstarter number like 26 for us, and but this is our very first Mothership one, and we're itching to get into that system. Andrew, what would you like the folks out there to know about you? What do you
I
like?
re-
Who is Andrew?
Andrew is a mass conglomeration of science fiction and fantasy tropes all shoved into one person, which is good for you guys because that means that I'm quite capable of writing things for any sort of sci-fi system that you might think of. But my specialization is in Mothership. And the reason is because Mothership can be whatever you want it to be.
Amen.
It is a magical place of science fiction and sometimes death.
Right on. And that's why you're the team lead on Scrap Rats, because Scrap Rats is Mothership with an extra dose of death, right?
Yep. But wait, Zac, doesn't that mean you should be the one?
So, all right. So let's give an overview for folks who are diving in. What is Scrap Rats, and why is it different than other than other Mothership products?
Scrap Rats is a dirty, filthy, behind the lines scrap version of sci-fi. You have characters that are scavengers at best and maybe somewhat combat aligned at worst. And in this situation, it's the worst because Scrap Rats is actually a lower powered version of both Mothership and the 5e Commoner Core that we did before. So this means that if you try to get into combat, there's a good chance you're probably going to die.
Yeah, it's almost like the DCC character funnels, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you can use it that way at least to like weed out all the unscrupulous or unhealthy rats in your population and find the ones that really shine.
Of course, because you don't want any plague rats in your vicinity.
Right.
And the great thing about Scrap Rats too is that it is somewhat of a setting, but it's more of like a flavor. Yeah. So we have taken Scrap Rats, the flavor, and we have molded it into other things. And that's one of the things that we did with this book is we tried to keep the feeling of Scrap Rats going into Mothership.
Yeah.
And I think we did a pretty good job.
I think so. Yeah. And to be clear, you don't play as rats, right? You're just called a rat because you're dirty and gross and you're a scrapper. So you like you like shiny thing, a bit of tin foil, right? Like that's
shiny.
Yeah, that's what you're after. Yeah, I think we absolutely carried it. Like Scrap Rats, the whole point of this playing in this setting and in this sort of a Mothership game is that you're out for money, and you're out for money by salvaging things. Those are the types of missions, those are the types of quests that you'll be taking on, right? Or salvage missions. And it doesn't vary from that. You're not a hero. You never will be. You're not, on the deck of a military vessel. You're not sent in to clear out a bug infestation. Like, that is not the job of a scrap rat. um,
And if you do become a hero, it's completely by accident.
that's right. Exactly. Exactly. What else could we say about Scrap Rats before we go into like some of the content of the book? Anything else we want to cover?
Um, I think it's important to drive home just how particularly deadly scrap rats can be. Whereas in let's just go with Mothership for now. With the baseline Mothership stats, you have sort of at least a decent chance of succeeding on some rolls. Whereas with Scrap Rats Mothership, you have a much lower starting set of statistics and saves. And what this means is that you will be making you will be failing a lot more rolls and your stress will be building up a lot quicker, which is what we want.
Yeah, I told somebody yesterday that Scrap Rats is like throwing a character into the galaxy without a life preserver.
Yeah, because the life preserver stopped working 50 years ago.
Yeah, and you don't have enough money to repair it.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool. Well, let's talk about what's in the book, because this book is also not just an adventure. I have a billion Mothership books on my shelf, and I feel like this one is different. Even though I love all of those, it's got a lot of varied content, and so let's just kind of walk through and show people or tell people what they can expect. The first thing is something that we just talked about, which is the idea of building a classless character, right?
Mhm.
And it's really simple. And we collaborated with not just you, but also Greenspore and a couple others to put that together in a way that we felt like was still true to the Mothership mechanics and sensibilities.
I also want to give a shout out to Greenspore for cutting down my nonsense a lot. I had some flowery language in there, and they were just kind of like, nope, which is okay because the book is small. We want to keep it condensed.
Yeah, so we give the idea of building out your rat, and not only do we give guidance for creating a classless character, but we also give out like new loadouts and things like that. We have new equipment that you can gear up with, a few new weapons and armor sets, just because you're going to need to acquire that eventually. And we wanted to give you like a little table. Really, we want this to be a book that you could buy right alongside the core Mothership book and have everything that you need to run, and that includes a variety of gear.
Yeah, the other thing that we added to the Mothership version, which I don't know if I've seen this done before, but because of the power level that it's much less than a regular Mothership game. We've actually included some standard arrays for your statistics and your saves. That way, all of your Mothership scrap rats can feel at a similar power level, while also having a good chance of having bad things happen to them.
And then one other thing that I would note is that I think that we kind of give some sort of an idea about if you want to level up into a class, there is some guidance for that. If that's something that you eventually want to make a part of your character. Some of us, though, we just like staying as a scrap rat and seeing how many missions we can go on before we bite the dust. It's not many, but it's fun.
And that's a pretty common theme throughout the scrap rat scenarios too, pushing your luck, testing the limits of what you can get away with before you actually start getting in a lot of trouble.
Yeah. So once you've built your character, the next portion of the book is designing your crash pad and putting together your crew. So we imagine Scrap Rats as a collaborative game, right? Like, as difficult as it is to be a scrapper, it would be exponentially more so if you didn't have a team around you. And so we don't get heavy into all of that, and we don't imagine a lot of ship-to-ship combat, at least for the time being. So the tables and things that we have there are largely about flavor, right? Like, you're going to have a rust bucket that you're flying around. What does that rust bucket look like? What is it called? There's a bunch of fun tables for the party to roll up on and kind of get an experience for that. There's also like a fun table about little mods and benefits that you can get to improve little tweaks to your party based on being around your ship.
So, for example, I'm looking at the tables right now. You could have a ship, if you really wanted to, called the Putrescent Vagabond, and that's those are random things that you can get on a table. But your ship could also be like a rusted cobalt blue and have scavenged interior corridors, all of which are random options on these tables that we have built around D10s from Mothership, of course.
Mm-hmm. And then you also roll on a table that gives you a benefit, which is what we're talking about, right? So you can have the benefit of replicating fuel engines. Your ship uses 50% less fuel than normal due to technology lost technology integrated into it.
Right.
So there's a variety of things that just make it fun. They're nothing major. And then you roll up I got inspired by Powered by the Apocalypse a little bit, and the Monster of the Week setting where you roll on a table to kind of determine relationships within the crew and how you're tied to each other, because I feel like that lets you hit the ground running when it comes to interplayer dynamics.
It does. Having there's a few games out now that do that really well, where you can either roll on tables or you decide one person that's kind of like your background connection. And the way that we've done this here is we just have a table that you roll on. Yeah. And you can do that for each member. And of course, there's a bunch of different things that are neat on here. Some things that are funny, of course, because when you're rolling around the galaxy trying not to die, humor is going to be one of your saving graces.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So that's really about putting together your crew, putting together yourself, getting geared out. After that, the book dives into a few short little notions on space stations. The goal of this book is not to give you a setting book with a bunch of, fully fleshed out and realized locations for you to walk around and explore. It's really more of a inspiration tool for you as the GM to set up your quest opportunities or places for you to have your players sell off their salvage and things like that. It's the place where you go to maybe rest and recover in between missions. And that we have a handful of options there. Just a few pages in the book, but I think it really helps kind of fill the gaps in between engagements.
And of course, when it comes to these stations, they all have their own distinct flavor, but they all keep that edge of scrappiness that the whole kind of Scrap Rats universe has.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want your scrappers showing up at like a top of the line military, research station. These are places where your scrap rat's gonna belong.
Yeah.
Company. This is the Nar Shaddaa. Yeah.
There are some that are, I would say, closer to Ord Mantell, however.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. Then we come to the meat of the book, a huge section of it, which is what we call our scenario arcs. The scenario arcs, and then tied in with those scenario arcs, are the artifacts, denizens, and NPCs that you encounter in those arcs, right? So the book is going to come loaded with 5, probably maybe more, scenarios. Each one of these scenarios is kind of a blueprint, is how I envision it. A blueprint of how an adventure could go. It starts off with a pitch. Everyone starts off with a pitch. Then it leads into a little bit backstory. It mentions what types of creatures you're going to encounter. And then we have the blueprint, which is a set of bullet-pointed paragraphs that walk the warden, the game warden, through what is this adventure composed of. And most of these, so an entire scenario is like 2 or 3 pages, right? Like it's not huge, it's not expansive. There's plenty of places for you as the GM to fill in the gaps and to inject your own flavor or your own plot twist or your own whatever. But also, there's enough there that you don't have to do all of the work, right?
We've got a lot of the mechanical stuff actually in the scenarios, whereas a lot of the story and a lot of the descriptions for some of the characters and things of that nature are left up to the warden so that they can kind of make it their own adventure.
Yeah, it's more than a hook. It's less than a here, read this.
Right. Yes.
Right.
And personally for me, as a mothership warden, I like to make sure that each of my sessions feel a little unique.
Hmm.
And these scenarios, the way that they are set up, allow me to make small changes or even bigger ones very easily while keeping the core mechanics and feel of the scenario intact.
Yeah, and I think this is a good time to point out that you, and not just you, several of us have been running a lot of these scenarios, almost all of these scenarios, heavily at various conventions over the past
Yep.
6 months.
Yes,
These
at
have been,
Gary Con and then at Origins.
yeah,
And then we're running them again in about a month here at Gen Con and Gamehole. And I think you had a couple other ones too,
yeah,
didn't you?
yeah, absolutely. So there's quite a few places where these have been play tested, and of course, some of these adventures came from our earlier edition, our earlier Scrap Rat system, and so even though the system has completely changed, the story hasn't, and there's we know that there's good meat on those bones, and we've had great feedback from the people who have ran these. That it's a great way of putting together a scenario. Um,
Yeah.
here's some things
And
that, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
and the wardens that we've had to run these too, they have come back and they've told us like, oh, I made this small change and this small change, and I added this as my own flavor, and we're just like, good. That's why we have these blueprints. Like we want you to fluff it up, make it your own.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the cool thing that I liked hearing about that, right, is that they felt empowered to do that
Mm-hmm.
without a lot of guidance, right? Like it's like, oh,
Right.
I understand that this is a blueprint, but there is many things that go into building something outside of the what's on the page, right?
Yes.
And it works out great. So I think it works out really well. One thing that I'll note though, we don't have to get into all of these adventures. In fact, I don't want to. But what I will say is that there are key pieces, through lines throughout all of these adventures that remain consistent, right? And that's not to say that your party needs to do only these things, but it might be you'll kind of see. There's always a pitch that involves, hey, you're going to go get salvage, right? Then once you get into it, there is always an enemy to be encountered, something with a stat block, right?
Right.
And sometimes that creature's stat block is very powerful and you're meant to run away, really.
Mm-hmm.
Not that you couldn't kill it, but probably you're going to want to run. Sometimes it's going to be a very challenging fight, but the intention is to fight. But there's always an encounter to be had there. And then there is always an artifact. And if I
These
was,
are fun.
yeah, I think this is maybe one of the last things that makes our book unique is the idea of you are a nobody and you are encountering a something, right? Something that you should not be messing with, arguably. Something that is above your pay grade. This is one of my favorite sci-fi tropes, right? Like Scrap Rats was originally designed as like an homage to the Alien franchise, and there's a lot of this there, right? I love the idea of encountering something ancient, something primordial, something, a tech that's long lost, a device, a doomsday device, whatever it is. I get a thrill out of that as a player and as a storyteller.
Yeah. The fear and the discovery of the unknown is a huge part of any good sci-fi horror.
Yeah, and also like, as much as I love Alien, like we've already got great Alien RPGs in
Mhm.
Mothership stories and in the Alien RPG system. So like I wanted ours to be a little bit different than just you are always encountering xenomorphs. You're always encountering super deadly aliens. So it's like, all right, well, what if the thing that you're always encountering are artifacts, right? And yes, there's monsters, but really the thing that you walk away from the session on is like, that was a crazy fight with that bug or that whatever robot. But holy crap, what did we get ourselves into with this item? And
Yep.
how are we going to resolve it? Because that you can carry into other sessions. And you're taking it back to spaceport and you're trying to sell off this artifact. And maybe you decide you're going to keep it on your ship. And what does that mean? Like, there's so many great things that you can carry with you when you have an artifact that you can't quite do as much when it's a nasty beast. So...
That's not to say you couldn't try to capture a nasty beast, but it's going to take a lot of effort.
Yes, yeah.
A lot more than just picking up an item.
Yeah, that's another type of character funnel. Beast capture. So, like I said, there's 5 of these scenario arcs that come in the base book. If we hit some stretch goals, we'll be adding some more to that. So we're going to load you down with a lot of examples there, all of which have been play tested. And we've also got new NPCs with stat blocks, new denizens or monsters with stat blocks. We've got a bunch of artifacts, not just the ones that are in these scenarios, but actually some extra ones that you can utilize. So there's a lot of tools for the DM to throw in there. There is one last thing. We had a lot already. And then you came up with this really funky idea for a campaign, right?
Yes, I did. It is, I haven't quite nailed down the actual overall name yet, but it is a Egyptian themed solar system that the rats eventually make their way to and discover this entire civilization that is pretty much out to get humanity. And of course, you're in your little scrapper ship, your junker ship, your Walmart brand ship, as I like to call it. And so you find this civilization, and actually one of the stretch goal adventures leads into this big conflict wherein you discover this undead alien race and you try to get away from them, or you try to help them. And I don't want to go into specifics too much because I don't want to spoil anything, but there are some very high stakes in these adventures, and there are 3 of them. We're including one of them in the base Mothership Scrap Rats book if we get to a certain level on the Kickstarter, and then the other 2 will come later and other Kickstarters that we're planning on doing. Of course, there are going to be other things than just these 3 adventures. I've got a cartographer's guide to the Ennead system, which is what it's called. I have a bestiary, which has a bunch of new Mothership stat blocks for creatures. I've got a equipment document. And then I have a couple other things in the works, too, for that.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so one of the things that I really like, and maybe I don't think I'm alone on an island. One of the things I like is knowing that creators that offer up a Kickstarter have a long-term plan to carry that brand through, right? And so what you're communicating is that we have that plan.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. So we're looking at including the first part of this campaign in this, and then we are already neck deep in developing the campaign further. Yes. It's not like you won't be playing our campaign for a year, but we wanted to give something that is multiple scenarios, multiple arcs that are strung together, that tell a longer form story, still within the Scrap Rat presentation, right? And so that's what's in the works. We'd love to be able to include the first part in it, but it's going to happen one way or another. We're going to make this thing, right? So this first book is kind of your jumpstart guide. It gives you all the tools you need to tell your adventures and to put your own spin on the adventures we include, and to set you up for this campaign that is to come. And I'm super excited about it. Egyptian/undead meets space sounds like a whole heck of a lot of fun.
I may or may not have gotten inspired by Moon Knight. I'll just go ahead and say that.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I don't want to run us too much into the ground here with our time. I'll go ahead and say here at the end that if you're looking at backing, if this has piqued your interest, we have the digital tier, we have a physical tier where you get the zine. We also have terrain kits. We have dice towers, and we have dice. So there's a lot of cool accessory goodies. We also have maps. If you like tactile stuff, not every Mothership group does, but if you like to move outside of Theater of the Mind, We've got some maps for the scenarios that you can throw down. We've got modular terrain kits for building your own space stations and spaceships, which are super fun.
We got a chance to interact with those at Origins, and it was very exciting.
Yeah. So there's all sorts of stuff there. If you jumped on early, we've got the early bird patches that you can snag for free. And oh gosh, there's quite a bit of stuff. So I'd encourage you to check out the whole page. There'll be a lot of add-ons. If all you want to do is pledge at the dollar level or pledge at the digital level, and then dive into the backer kit later and get all your goodies that way, that's great too. We're completely cool with that. You're not going to miss anything other than the patches by doing so.
You want the patches.
But you want the patches. Yeah, absolutely.
They're really cool. Actually, I might have one right here. Let me see.
Ooh.
This might be an older one, but I believe this is going to be similar to what we have on the Kickstarter. Let's see here. This one right here.
That's it. That's the patch.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So if you want to grab your own Scrap Brats crew member patch, we'd encourage you to do so. All right, Andrew. Well, thank you so much for hanging out for me this morning.
Anytime.
Yeah. And we look forward to a successful Kickstarter.
Yes, we do.